So it's freebie day here in the studio, and as you are, well, most of you are aware, with every new release, we have a freebie, a coordinating freebie at that. We just released our new Hello Fall bundle. For those of you that haven't seen it, you gotta see it. It's one of my favorite bundles ever, especially the little centerpiece, and I think the flowers take the cake for me, but you know, you can decide which is your favorite. But anyway, today we have a maple leaf card, which is perfect. So when you're attending your Thanksgiving feast with your friends or family, you've got a coordinating card to go along with the gift that you make them. You know, you can put your own sentiment or stamp inside of it. It's a maple leaf. We use some very nice fall colors. And one thing that is, one thing I should mention is that this would be great for our friends north of the border in Canada for Canada Day as well. So anyway, without further ado, let's take a look at what we have. I've already sort of laid things out just so that I know what I'm doing. And it's a very simple card, so we're going to take a little bit of time today and just like do some inking and show you some other things too. There's also going to be some embossing that's going to happen. Anyway, this is the card base here. And I actually cut this out with my maker. And one thing that when people ask me about machines and the scoring, I always say that I like the score lines, the solid score lines on envelopes and card bases, because it just looks nicer. For our 3D projects, I don't really recommend it because it's not as accurate. But first thing we're going to do, and the reason I'm folding this in half is because it will help me actually see the little borders that we need around these better than if I have it like this. Kind of throws it off. So I'm folding this in half. This yellow piece, I think this is squash, AC squash, is going to go on the inside. This is the inside. This is where you're going to write your little sentiment. So I'm going to leave it like that for a second. And I'm going to get my glue. And we're going to get this glued down. We'll start, actually, you know what, before we do that, I just realized that we need to do some inking. Okay, so I'm gonna hit this squash color. I think it's squash, is it? No, it's melon, actually, AC melon. And you know what I did before I did this? I took a scrap piece, the piece that this came off of, and I ran my melon color on that scrap piece to see what kind of look it gave me. And I actually pulled out 2 orange colors, and this was my favorite of the 2. So that's a little tip there. Before you actually go ahead and apply your ink to the final piece of paper, rather than mess it up and you have to cut it out again, test out your inking on a scrap piece of paper so that you're sure that that's how you want it. Now this ink pad is it's running out of steam, but anyway, for those of you that are familiar, and actually let me just take a second to show you. We do have on our app, this is the Dreaming Tree app here. And when you open it up, for those of you wanting to know where I'm getting these supplies, under supplies at the bottom of the app, there's a section where I discuss the little ink pad, or the pads. These are the pads right here. You're not going to be able to see this very well on camera, and you can literally click the link. It'll take you right to Amazon where you can get them. And then also the inks that I use are right here as well. Okay, so again, this is under the supplies section under Craft Central. I pretty much have almost most of the things that I use, which is not a lot. Okay, and there's links to pretty much everything there. So anyway, you can find the links there. Just download the app. And what I do, depending on what I'm inking, for something like this where I kind of just want to hit the edges, literally just hit my ink pad with my applicator, and then this is kind of a motion that you just develop over time. So if you want, just practice a little bit. I'm hitting the edge, but I'm also kind of grazing the top in a very swift, gentle motion. I'm not really pushing down too hard. I mean, it's all going to depend on the amount of force that you apply while you're inking is really going to depend on the freshness or the staleness of your ink pad. Okay, if your ink pad is brand new, when you push down, you're going to get a lot of ink. If you push down hard while you're inking, you're going to get a ton of ink on there, so you go a little bit lighter. Now this one, I guess we use orange a lot. I need to replenish my, this is a Tangelo supply. That's the color, Tangelo. And, you know, I can tell that, well, this happens for one of two reasons. If the colors are too similar, then you're going to need to push down a little bit harder and add more ink for it to really show through. But in this case, I have a feeling that it's really more because it's starting to dry up and I've used a lot of the ink, so I have to go back and reapply and, you know, add a little bit more to get the effect that I want. And there's no right or wrong with this. You know, whatever looks good to you, that's what you stick with. Okay, and I just wanted to kind of hit it a little bit just so that, you know, it's got a little bit of pop to it. And we're going to do the same thing to another piece here in just a moment, but you get the idea. See, I'm going back again, and you can tell that color is getting more vibrant because the layers of ink are starting to kind of stack up a little bit. Okay, but it definitely adds a nice touch to your pieces to ink them so that they're not so plain. We do a lot of inking in a lot of our projects. And there we go. Okay, so anyway, back to this. So again, this is the inside. This is where this piece is going to go. And you can see how that feathery effect there kind of makes the brown almost bleed into the orange, so it seems more seamless rather than so, you know, there's less contrast, so it's not so, well, contrasty. All right, so let's get this glued into place. Less is more when it comes to the glue. And again, I kind of flipped it like this so I can see the full square and get this centered more accurately. And that looks nice right there. So pop that into place. There we go. Now, black, we're not going to ink the black because, well, it's black. I mean, unless you're using a lighter color. Sometimes when I'm working on Halloween projects, I'll actually use a little bit of black. Now, here, I almost made a mistake here. I was going to put glue on this whole thing. This black piece is going to go in here, so because there's a black background to our maple leaf. Now, if I put glue all over this whole thing, it's going to show up. So, what we want to do is, let's see, where do we start? We're going to start on this, and we're going to just go around the perimeter. Okay, and I'm going to put a pretty thick line of glue on here because it's going to start to set, and I don't want it to set. Now, while that's on there, I'm going to go in here and just do little dots onto our leaf because I know exactly where it needs to go here. If I was to try to put it on our black piece there, it would have been a huge mess. And then I'll do a thin little line around the perimeter here, like that. Okay, so we're not going to get any glue in any spots that we don't need to, and we want to get this nice and centered on the inside as well. Okay, just like that. There we go. All right. Okay, so you can see what that's starting to look like. Very simple so far. Now, I'm going to take this piece here, and I'm going to ink this, and I'm going to emboss it. Okay, now normally if I was just going to ink it, because it's so flimsy, I'd glue it to this piece, because ultimately we're going to need to do that anyway. But since I have to emboss this piece, I'm not going to do that, because I really don't want to try to emboss two pieces of paper that are glued together. So I'm going to go ahead and get my piece inked here. Okay, so just repeating the same process I did, and literally it's the same shape. I'm not even going to try to ink the inner little scallops there. I don't think it's necessary. Okay. And trust me when I say that when you have a new ink pad, you're not reapplying as often because you get plenty of ink in this pad. It really stores it, and I sometimes actually when I do dab a fresh ink pad, I'll actually rub some of it off because I don't like the heavy application unless I'm specifically looking for it. I like it when it's very subtle when I ink. Okay, so I'll just go around here, and I'm kind of keeping my hand inside so that I can have better control over this piece of paper so that I don't risk bending, creasing, warping it. Okay, let's see where we're at here. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay. And just apply as little or as much as you want. Or, you know, if you don't want to apply ink, you don't have to. If you're in a bind and you don't have time, just pop it together. And if you're not inking, you know, feel free to skip ahead. If you are scrubbing through and skipping ahead, as soon as I pick up this piece right here, you'll know that it's time for the next section. Now, actually, I'm going to be embossing this. So if you're not familiar with embossing, you're probably watching this video because we referred you to it to help you understand the process. And a question that we get often is, when you emboss and ink, which do you do and in what order first? So typically you want to ink first and then emboss, because if you emboss first and then try to ink, you're not going to get as much coverage because of the three-dimensional nature of embossing. It kind of raises things up and it makes it harder for the ink pad to get into some of the spots, so you're going to get an uneven coverage. But at the same time, artistically, that could look really cool. So again, art is very subjective, crafting is as well, and you do whatever you want to do, but 9 times out of 10, I would ink before I emboss. Okay, so I think the coverage on that is nice. Okay, so with this, as far as the embossing goes on this piece, we wanted to use this cool basket weave texture, and typically, lately, I've been using my, Sizzix Texture Boutique embossing full machine, because it does emboss a little bit lighter, it doesn't penetrate as deeply, and unfortunately, this folder is too large for that machine. So right now I'm just kind of getting it lined up so that the pattern on here is somewhat lined up nicely, because it is kind of geometric in nature. And so you put your piece of paper in the folder by itself like that, and then depending on your embossing machine, you usually have some plates that you put around it, just like this. Okay, and we're gonna feed it through. This is a Cuttlebug. These are discontinued. I'm not sure why they discontinued them. I personally love embossing. And you just feed it through, and then it's going to leave that impression on the paper. Pardon the smack there. So here's the reveal, and you can see what it does to the paper. It really kind of makes it pop, especially with that inking. This piece of paper now is so vibrant because of the way that the light is being absorbed, and also how it's also being reflected in some of the spots. And that just makes it look really cool. All right, so what we're gonna do next is glue this piece to our red piece. We want the nice little reds to kind of show through there. And you can see what embossing does to paper. It really stretches the fibers out, and sometimes it can actually make it so that things don't fit as perfectly as if they would if you didn't emboss it. So if you're noticing that as you're applying this, that things are just kind of, maybe this thing looks a little bit bigger, or it doesn't look like the right size, that is actually a normal byproduct of embossing. It does kind of, you know, play with the fibers and well, stretch and tug at them, and it changes the shape of the paper. So just be wary of that. I know it's not gonna, hopefully, not going to impact it too much to where, you know, it's gonna look weird, but it, you know, might be a little bit off. So anyway, we've got our glue on here, and we're gonna do our best to get this on there. And this is really kind of sagging, but as long as we take our time and nudge it around here and there. There we go. While that glue is still somewhat tacky and There we go. Yep, see, I can tell that it kind of stretched it out a little bit, but that's all right. It's gonna look great. Okay, so got that piece. Now we've got a red piece that this is gonna go on. We're actually gonna pop dot this onto the front of the card, and then this piece is gonna go, we're actually gonna glue this on flat, but we do wanna hit this with a little bit of ink. And here's another reason why I really like these applicators, is because you can get into some really tight spots with it. Now check this out. This ink pad, as soon as I dab it, look at the coverage on that. It's a lot. And let me see here. You know what? I can do this because it's going to be hidden, but look how much comes off. Okay, and disregard that. That's our envelope. I'm going to close that up. You're not going to see it, but I just wanted to show you. So I kind of rub some of it off, and then the cool thing is you can really shape this thing into, you know, however small you need it, so that you can get into some of these smaller areas to apply your ink. Now it's not as effective sometimes because, you know, you're working with a smaller surface area, but it makes it a little more possible. So, and then when I dab this on a new ink pad, I always go way lighter than I need to, because I know that I'm going to get a lot of ink on there. And with this piece here, it is, you know, it's a lot easier to get in there with this this little applicator, but it's still not going to be as accurate as if I was inking the sides. So if it's not as impeccable and accurate as I did around the outsides, I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it. I just want to kind of give this maple leaf the feeling that it's, you know, it's fallen and it has you know, gotten a little bit of sun, so that the ends are a little crispy and burnt and rotting. Not rotting, but decomposing. Rotting was it's kind of a harsh term for such a beautiful specimen of nature, but you get what I'm saying. Okay, so do your best to kind of hit that a little bit and just, you know, just kind of make it look like it's had its heyday and it's gone through its cycle. Okay. There we go. And then what I'll also do is I'm going to hit the perimeter, the little interior circle there. Yeah, see, I just dabbed that and there's a whole bunch of ink on it. But you know what? It's really comes down to is the sum of all the parts here. And once we get everything glued together and all in place, everything's going to look nice together, and no one's going to notice any little imperfections. Inking is probably one of my favorite things to do, and I try my best. Occasionally you mess up. If you mess up really bad, you may need to cut something out, but typically if I make a little boo-boo here and there, I just let it ride. Just let it go. You gotta let it go like the leaves. Okay, so yeah, that's it's not very intense of a change as far as that inking goes, but it certainly gives it a little bit more depth. Okay, so this one is going to get glued flat onto the actual card base, right onto the front. So get your glue around the perimeter. Got to work kind of quick. There's a lot of little details that we still have to hit on the leaf, but we don't need to make sure that we get glue on every single little piece. Just do your best to get it into as many little pieces or places that you can before you start to notice that some of the glue is starting to dry. So you know what, I'm just going to go with that. Oh no, whoops, that would have been bad. And just pop that right on there. Match it up with the existing brown part. Here we go. Beautiful. And then this is going to go right on top, like so. I'm going to flip this over because we're going to use some foam squares to attach this because we want it to be dimensional. You can certainly glue it down flat if you'd like. We're going with the dimensional look for this. And I'm going to try to keep my, well, you see here, we've got a thin little area here. This is a foam square that I actually cut in half. And you can certainly do that with just a standard pair of scissors. I can show you that real quick if you want. You literally just take it and you can cut right through it. And this one actually cut into a fourth of the size. So actually it was cut twice. And you can just pop that right on there, and that will actually hide better too, so that your recipient doesn't see it. Okay, and then when I put foam squares on, I kind of like to flip it over and just push down in certain areas and kind of test to see where there's weak spots, where it might be sagging or not sitting nice and flat, and that's going to help me determine where to put my next little foam square. Okay, so let's get one here, and these were kind of curling a little bit, but that's just because of the embossing. I'm just going to go around and kind of flare them out, make them straight, and then just push in little areas here, and just make sure that it doesn't droop too much. But I think that's plenty. And then we just need to take these off, which is always fun, especially when you cut them. There we go. And sometimes I use a X-Acto knife to do this. I still remember one of the dreamers yelled at me for doing this in a good way, in kind of a, hey, I got your back kind of way, because I don't want you to stab yourself. But I would worry if I was doing this with an alcoholic beverage, but I'm pretty good with my hands, so I'm not worried about stabbing myself. Okay, so we're gonna peel these off. Just make sure they're all peeled off. This is a symmetrical piece, so it doesn't matter where it goes on. What you want to do though is just try to make sure that you align it with the little teardrop shaped cutouts on all four sides, so that you can see the brown poking through. And just press down in all the little areas that contain the little foam squares, and there you have it. Okay, there's your card. Pretty simple. Did a lot to it to really make it pop, but I think it looks great. And of course, with every card comes a coordinating envelope. So let's take a look at our envelope. I've already gone ahead and pre-folded the two tabs and then the one side. Now we also, as we always do, have a nice little motif that is cut into our envelope, and you can see this little additional piece. What it does, it kind of creates a little lip here, a little accent that goes beyond the melon color. Okay, so what we want to do is we'll throw some glue. We can go all the way up to the perimeter here. Go easy on the glue here though. Perimeter, just like that. And then maybe just a few little drops around these little cutouts for our design. And then what I typically do, let me get another line right here. It didn't come out for some reason. I will lift this up so that you can see the crack, or the crease, and just line it up like this. Make sure it's centered, and then literally just kind of, you could do it this way too. You can take it, line it up, and then just bring this over right on there, and then bam. Just drop it down, and bring it back this way. Make sure it folds in, because we want the flap to fold in. There we go, just like that. Okay, and then I'm going to fold in these two tabs. Now let me find this is my makeshift bone folder. It's actually a silhouette scraper. I use that to kind of get better folds on these lines, score lines. And then we just simply close this up with a little bit of glue. Now I'm going to go a little bit heavier on the glue towards the bottom. Because if you've ever seen the dimensional projects that we make, I typically take the glue and I spread it out nice and thin all the way out to the edge, so everything is nice and clean. Need a little extra love there. There we go. And you simply just take it over and just glue that down. Make sure that it's lined up as precisely as you can. And I'm just using my whole hand here to apply pressure to all these little areas. Make sure that that closes up nicely. And oh, one little bonus here. Okay, so there's your pretty envelope, ready to go. And let's take a look here now, because this is, I'm not going to mess with this yet because it's still drying. All that's left to do is throw some little rhinestones on here. Let me see how many I have here. All right, we're gonna do one little rhinestone. Now, these rhinestones, they do come with a little sticky backing. I don't really trust it. Okay, so these rhinestones, as I mentioned, they come with sticky backs, but when you're making something for someone, even if you're making it for yourself, you're gonna wanna glue the rhinestones down anyway, because that sticky back that's on there doesn't really work very well. So I've got my pick-me-up tool, and it's got a sticky little tip on it, and you can literally just kind of pop it on like that. And on the back here, you've got a little tool that you can pull out. It's got a nice flat edge. And what I'll do is I'll just dip this in a little bit of glue, and then I'll kind of scrape some of it off so it's not too much, because when I apply it, I don't want it shooting out everywhere. And we'll just take it and pop it right here in the bottom. Just a nice little embellishment for the envelope. Okay, just like that. That looks nice. And then here we're gonna have some even smaller ones, which is why this is super handy. And they are sticky on the back, but now especially with this, because the paper's not flat, you're gonna need to glue this down if you wanna go the extra step and add some embellishments. But we're gonna put some rhinestones in between the teardrops and the little flourish there. So I just kind of dipped that in a little bit of glue, wiped off the excess so there's not a whole ton of it there, and just find a spot there between those two and use the other half of the tool here to get that off of your sticky little tip. And then you can literally just grab the next one, dip it in a little bit of glue, wipe off the excess, and pop that into place. Press down with your applicator, and you can see how nice that looks there. Okay. And just kind of going to keep on cruising here, get the rest of these in place so that everything has nice symmetry. And who doesn't love a little bit of extra bling to jazz up your piece and show your recipient that you really put in a lot of time and effort into the special handmade card, which you don't see a lot of these days. So I'm sure they will appreciate it. Well, that being said, that pretty much wraps up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the process. If you did, please take a moment and hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. I get very excited when I come in here and see that little counter back there. It used to go up in single-digit increments, but YouTube changed it, so it only goes up now with every 100 new subscribers. But that's okay. When I come in, I'm like, wow, we got 100 new subscribers. It really puts a smile on my face and adds fuel to the fire. So I appreciate everyone that has already subscribed, and if you haven't, please do so. And also, if you make this or anything from our new Hello Fall bundle, I would love to see it, as would the 16,000 plus dreamers that inspire us daily, and hopefully you'll be the next to inspire someone else. But anyway, you guys have a happy fall. I'm going to try to go out and take some photos of the colors before the snow steals them from me. And as always, I look forward to crafting with you again.